Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast
with our mom,
Misty Bailey. Tips and encouragement
for
real-life homeschooling
is headed your way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am Misty Bailey, blogger at Joy in the Journey and podcaster here at Joyfully Homeschooling. I am so excited to catch up with you all today. I am recording this episode mid-January. We've been back to school for a few days after Christmas break, and can I just say, it is so hard to get back into the routine of things. But I am so happy to be back in the routine of things. Christmas break, my husband works at a factory, and so he's been there a little over a year now, and he gets 2 weeks off at Christmas. And so it feels like when he's home, we can get nothing done. And so we were sleeping in. One day my kids slept until 9:30, including Daniel, who never sleeps that late. He's up at 7 o'clock on the dot, ADHD kiddo. But it's been a rough start, but I am thankful to be back into the routine, to have Dad back at work and just back into the rhythm of everything. So I wanted to share with you guys what is saving our homeschool right now. And one thing I want to mention is logic of English. So I hesitated promoting this until we had used it for a few weeks, and now we're 3 months into using it, and I really like it a lot. My Daniel has dyslexia, and we've tried a lot of different reading programs through the years, and things work great for a few months, and then he would hit a wall. And the program next to Logic of English that worked probably the longest was Reading Eggs. And we really, really liked Reading Eggs. But once he finished the Reading Eggs, just the regular Reading Eggs, and jumped into Reading Express, which is for older kids, which I was so happy he was able to go that far, but it moved so fast and he was just not able to keep up. And that's when we were like, okay, where do we go from here? And so my friend Mary Ann from Homeschooling with Dyslexia, who I've had on the podcast before, she recommended this to me last year, and I didn't get it then, and I really wish I had. So I'm going to leave a link to it in the show notes. This is not a paid plug. I purchased the program myself, just so you know, but the link in the show notes is an affiliate link, because now that we have used the program and are enjoying it, then I did sign up for their affiliate program. So by recommending it, if you do purchase it, I do get a little bit of commission on that. It doesn't cost you any extra, but I did just want to share it with you all because it has made a big, big difference for Daniel, and I'm very, very thankful for it. So the other thing I want to mention before we dive into this episode is that I will be speaking for the Homegrown Generation Conference sponsored by Schoolhouse Rocked. And the Homegrown Generation Online Family Expo is a one-of-a-kind event. Live and fully interactive, the conference will feature some of today's most popular speakers addressing the most important issues that homeschool families face. Speakers include Kirk Cameron, Sam Sorbo, Israel Wayne, Ginger Hubbard, Lee Bortons, Rachel Carmen, Dorinda Wilson, Connie Albers, Abby Ranella, Karen Debut, Anna Willis, me, and many more. The cost for this is only $20, and the conference runs Monday, February 17th through Friday, February 21st, 2020. So head to the link in the show notes, which again, that's an affiliate link. I will be speaking there, to learn more and to sign up. I'm really excited about this expo. I think it's going to be amazing. So, there we are. We are caught up. So, now let's get on to the topic of burnout. I did an episode on burnout way back on episode 41. But I wanted to bring the topic up again with my friend Davonne Parks. And in this episode, we are going to be chatting about the warning signs of burnout, how to overcome it, and lessons we have learned about it. And this season right now is the time when so many of us are overwhelmed and just feel blah when it comes to homeschooling. And guess what? It does not have to be that way. I hope this episode encourages you all to have more joy in your homeschool and reminds you that you are not alone. So let's dive into this episode with me and my good friend, Davonne Parks. Podcast sponsors make the Joyfully Homeschooling podcast possible. So let's take some time to learn more about our current podcast sponsor, Bookshark. You chose to homeschool so you can have the family life you imagine, full of good books, interesting discussions, laughter, and inside jokes. You want a flexible lifestyle that lets you sleep to a reasonable hour, sneak in some me time, and still have energy to get the kids to their clubs, rehearsals, and co-ops. Bookshark's 4-day literature-rich curriculum allows for this lifestyle while giving your kids a top-notch education so they can accomplish their dreams. Use it as scheduled in the 36-week instructor's guide, or do your own thing and skip around, enjoying the books and hands-on science activities whenever and however you like. If you are a parent always on the hunt for a rich variety of learning resources for your voracious learner, Bookshark is a curriculum to know about. Head to bookshark.com to browse curriculum, download samples, or request a catalog. That is bookshark.com. There, you can browse curriculum, download samples, or request a catalog. Now, let's get on with the podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling podcast. I am here again today with my friend, Davonne Parks. How are you today, Davonne?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. I think you need to be like an honorary co-host all the time. How much fun would that be?
That would be fun. I have a lot of fun doing these.
So today we're going to talk about burnout. And I know that in our 10 years of homeschooling, we have never dealt with burnout. We are always happy, joyful homeschool moms, right?
Of course, we're perfect.
We're so perfect. If we could go back and like just look at how perfect we were from the beginning, we are still that perfect today. So, okay, but in all seriousness, I want to talk about burnout because this episode's going to air like mid to beginning February. We're recording this in January. And that is a major, major season of burnout for many homeschool moms. Why do you think that is?
I think maybe partly the winter blues. You can't get out as much. You're far enough into the school year that you're getting tired, but you're not quite far enough to see the end of it. So it feels eternal, even though it's not. The kids might be going stir crazy.
Yeah, I think too, part of it could also be coming back from Christmas break. Like, I think sometimes that rest time at Christmas break is almost, we need it, but yet it's so hard to get back into the rhythm of things.
I will agree with that. I think there's such a big break from Christmas break to spring break, or like such a long span between those that it's hard sometimes to deal with that.
But I think you're right. I think that the break between Christmas and spring is too much. But I also think the break between Thanksgiving and Christmas break are too close.
Yeah, I will 100% agree with that, because I know for us every year in December, and I used to fight this, but I don't anymore, it was like half school. From the time we stopped from the Thanksgiving break until January, it's never really 100% full on school for us.
Yeah. And so then you go through that season where you're like not in school, and then you come back full force with a long time until a break, and you absolutely hit the burnout wall. So I want to talk about that today, like recognizing it, preventing it, how to overcome it, and our own personal seasons of burnout. So I know you've been through it yourself. You want to talk with us, share with us a little bit about your seasons of burnout?
Sure. I have had 2 major seasons of burnout where I was burnt out the entire school year. The first time happened when my oldest was probably around 2nd or 3rd grade. I had lost 4 family members in 9 months, and it was a really hard time for me emotionally. And I was just burnt out that year. The other time was after I'd been working full time for 2 years, and then my family renovated a commercial property, and then we renovated a fixer-upper home, and still homeschooling in the midst of all of that. So I was very burnt out. I spent about a year really burnt out that time as well.
So what do you think triggered the seasons of burnout?
Emotional overwhelm.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that's a big one. I don't think that I think that as homeschool moms, we pour so much into our kids that we don't give ourselves that time to rest, that time to heal. And then we just end up burning ourselves out whenever we go through seasons of emotional stress.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So my big season of burnout was, and I honestly don't even know what triggered it. Well, I do kind of know what triggered it. So it's awful. But I had used, and I know you remember this, but I had used Heart of Dakota for a couple years with the girls, and then it didn't fit anymore. And then I decided I was going to use it again because we had loved it so much the 2 years that we had used it. And Daniel was, oh gosh, he was probably probably 3 when this happened, 3 or 4. And I decided to use it again. And our days were so long. I remember that year, our very first day of school, we did not get done until after 3:00 and we started at 9. And I was like, why in the world am I doing this? It was like the worst first day of school ever. But I made sure we marked off every check and every box, and we did all of it exactly as it was written. And I wanted so bad for the curriculum to fit, for the girls to want to learn together and to stay together. And so I just pushed through that curriculum that just was not fitting our family anymore, until I went and heard Sarah McKenzie at the Great Homeschool Convention. And I wrote a blog post about this. I'll leave the link in the show notes. It's called When You're Homeschooling Out of Negligence. And I went to hear her, and I literally walked out of her session and cried and went home, and I literally ditched all of our curriculum for the rest of the school year. Like, we did nothing but interest-led learning. And it was probably, that happened in April. So we did the last 6 weeks of school, just interest-led learning, whatever the kids wanted to learn about, threw it all out. And we just found our homeschool joy again. But that whole school year, like you, I mean, it was one of the worst school years. And I was just trying to get something to fit that just didn't. And that was what caused my burnout. Plus, I think I was working too much at the time and trying to, I don't know, with 3 kids and Daniel not quite ready for preschool. But I think I was just trying to do too much in general at that time. And that's what led to my season of burnout.
Yeah, and I think having a toddler who's not quite yet to that preschool stage is one of the most challenging times to homeschool, because they're into everything. They're kind of at that temper tantrum age, but they're not quite ready to sit there and do stuff. So I think that's the most challenging. And I also remember, if I'm remembering correctly, during your season of burnout, that's when you were having some health scares of your own and also going through some diagnoses for one of your kids.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I would say that probably largely contributed as well.
Yeah, we were going through that spring is kind of when we started noticing Daniel needed more than what we could give him. Like, we weren't quite ready for the diagnosis process at that point. And then also Allison was going through some issues with her hypermobility diagnosis. And I think that, again, that goes back to us not allowing ourselves to heal at that time, because we were just in a really rough season. But I was just pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to make everything work the way I thought my picture perfect homeschool should. This goes back to whenever we thought we were just wonderful and had it all together. And when that started to crumble, I didn't know how to deal with it,
Yeah.
And I think that for me is what pushed us into that season of burnout. And it was just a rough season overall. What do you think? And like I said, for me, what pushed me out of it was just honestly just ditching the curriculum, finding the joy in homeschooling again, and just taking kind of that break. What do you think pushed you out of your season of burnout?
For me, it was different both times. The first time I was, younger homeschool mom with younger kids and looking to homeschool moms who were further along on the path than me, who had like middle school and high school kids and were still homeschooling and thriving in that, that was a tremendous help. Because before, when I very first started homeschooling, and the more seasoned homeschool moms would say, you know, relax, and you're not a slave to the curriculum, and you don't have to do every single problem and every single lesson, I'd be thinking, yeah, right. Like, we're going to do everything because I'm the perfect homeschool mom.
Exactly.
A thing. But then whenever I reached that season of burnout, I felt really broken in that. And that's when I was finally willing to really take their wisdom to heart. I was ready for it at that point.
And don't you think it took you like hitting rock bottom just to even be receptive to what other people said? Like, I remember when I went to that homeschool convention, I had no intentions on going to the speakers. I still honestly felt like I had it all together, and which I don't know why I thought that, but I did in my mind. I'm like, well, this is just, I felt like it was, the reason we were having a harder time was because my kids were getting older, because we were going through different diagnosis issues with the kids. And I just felt like this is what homeschooling was supposed to be like as you had older kids. And then when I listened to that session, and I remember looking at the speaker lineup and me seeing it, and she started talking about rest, and I'm like, I could use some rest. Maybe she's going to tell me how to make my kids do school and listen. And then I literally went into that session, and it was just about letting things go, getting the joy, and kind of letting Christ into your homeschool and letting him lead your days, and letting, just realizing what true joy is when it comes to homeschooling. But I would not, if I would have known that session was about that, I would not have went. I'd have been like, psh, I don't need that. I wasn't receptive. I really wasn't, until I realized that I was broken, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that Sarah McKenzie's been a huge help to me too. Her book, Teaching from Rest, was super, super helpful. Yes. And she said something, I think in the session that you went to, because I also went to that session, and also in her book, she says, keep cutting back until there is peace in your home. And I happened to read Teaching from Rest right before my season of burnout, my second season of burnout. And that ended up being such a blessing to me. What we ended up doing is, my kids were older at this point. I'm in middle school and elementary school, maybe around 3rd and 7th grade, I think. We had an entire, 2nd and 6th grade. They were in 2nd and 6th, but we had an entire school year where we only did math and Bible. That was it. And I had thought, first off, there's no way I can do this. And then as I was looking at it, I decided we can do this. I can make all these science lessons from the Bible and history lessons and all these things. What I didn't know was that was going to be the year that I would start working full time again. No, I had already been working full time. Anyways, I didn't know how busy I was going to be that year. I didn't realize I was going to keep working full time was the problem. I thought, I'm going to be done working full time. We'll have all this great stuff. Our Bible ended up just being, we literally just read from the Bible a couple chapters a night. We ended up reading the entire Bible, and they did a little math lesson. And that was it, that entire school year. But that was the school year that their test scores were higher than they'd ever been before. It blew me away. And our trust is not in a test score. Even if they hadn't done well, it would have been okay. But what that showed me was that their results are not all on my shoulders. I do not have to carry the full weight of my children's education on me alone.
Yeah. And I think I remember Sarah McKenzie shared something similar to that in that session. And she talked about whenever she was on bed rest with one of her kids, and all they did that year was lay in bed and read books. And her kids' test scores were off the charts. And I know, is it Karen DeBeau? She has a website, Bible-based homeschooling, where they literally studied the Bible the whole year. They made that their backbone of their curriculum. And I think that I love what you said. You don't have to carry the full weight of your child's education on your shoulders, because I think that we put too much trust in ourselves and not on the person who called us to homeschool. Yes. And I think that we need to give ourselves a break. And if we don't give ourselves a break, we absolutely will end up in a season of burnout.
Yes. And I think we put too much trust in the curriculum.
Ooh, yeah.
And also, Karen DeBeau, I can't remember how to pronounce it, but she has a book called Bible-based homeschooling. And I read that book.
Oh, is it a book too? I thought it was just a website.
it's just a short ebook. It's like 99 cents or it might be free. I'm not sure. But that was really helpful to me because I read that right before I did the Bible and math year, and that made me feel like I could do it. So I didn't do the ideas, but she had more than just ideas. Like she talked about some of the things they did, but she also primarily talked about what we're talking about right now, which is trusting God with your kids' education and how that completely changed the way that she educated her kids. And I will say that 100% did it for me too. We have a lot more than just Bible and math now, but stripping everything away down to like the bare essential helped me to see how much wasn't necessary. And I went from homeschooling in fear and being afraid of what we're going to miss and what my kids might know to homeschooling in love. And when you can make that transformation from homeschooling in fear to homeschooling in love, it will change your entire homeschool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that the homeschooling in fear, I think a lot of times, at least for me, that comes from comparison and people watching us. Like I know that it's kind of like the Instagram, trying to think of how to say it. Like I know Sarah May talked about it in my interview with her, how she had to unfollow some people on social media because she's lost a lot of her homeschool joy watching what other people were doing and feeling like she didn't necessarily measure up.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily fall victim to that, but I fall victim with being like, okay, well, if I don't keep up, there's people watching me. And am I going to lead them down the wrong path? Am I going to let them down? So I fall in the other path. I think that's part of just being a homeschool group leader, being an influencer with being a homeschool blogger. I think it kind of goes along with that. But I think whenever we worry about that and we homeschool out of fear and we add things to our day or we add things to our homeschool because we're afraid of missing out or we're afraid of what other people think, that absolutely is part of the problem of burnout too, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times we are seeking approval, even if we're not necessarily recognizing it. Like we don't want our kids to maybe not know what everybody else is knowing or come across as anything negative. So even if we're not seeing it, I think it's very easy to fall into that of wanting other people to approve of what we do so much that it changes what we're doing.
We put too much pressure on ourselves.
Yes.
As homeschool moms. So, okay, Davonne, I want to move on to, let's talk about some of the warning signs of homeschool burnout. So we've both been through those seasons. I feel like we both have shared what led up to those seasons. So how do you know that you're in a season of burnout?
Okay. I think feeling tired a lot, feeling overwhelmed, like your school day is just so big, you don't know how you're even going to do it. Maybe being jealous of people whose kids are in public school, being irritable, easily irritated, not wanting to go anywhere, not wanting to do anything, things that you normally find joy in are you're no longer feeling joyful about. Maybe not wanting to be with your kids as much, kind of wanting more breaks from them.
Yeah, and feeling guilty. I think you feel guilty for that, but yet you also just need to get away.
Yes.
Yeah. I put tiredness too. I remember having to nap. And that was something I just don't do. I never did it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just never felt like I needed a nap. Now that I'm older, I'm getting old, I'm pushing 40. Now I need a nap sometimes, not because of burnout, but at that time it was abnormal for me to need to feel like a nap in the middle of the day, but I would sit down to watch a TV show middle of the day with the kids and just fall asleep.
Yeah.
Grumpy, like you said, the kids are tired. They do not want to do school, which some kids just don't want to do school, period. But when they're like dreading every single day getting up and doing school and having no fun at all, I think that's one. Using screens too much. I know that was a big one for me. I used it as a babysitter. at that time, or just to get us through the day, like just turn on the TV. So I didn't honestly have to deal with the kids because I was burnt out. Curriculum shopping, which for me in that season, I needed to curriculum shop because that was the problem for me. But I think whenever you feel like changing the curriculum, like, will definitely get you out of that funk, or buying curriculum and not using it over and over and over again, I think that's a warning sign too.
Okay, so for me, I actually do take naps sometimes. I've always been a napper. I enjoy it. But for me, a warning sign of burnout is whenever I just want to go lay in my bed in the dark and not talk to anybody and not sleep and not be on electronics or a book, just literally lay there.
Yeah.
And do nothing in the dark. And sometimes it's good for prayer and quiet time. But if that's happening regularly, that's a definite warning sign for me that something is off.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that going along with that is I would constantly need to do that, get in a room by myself in the dark, because I had migraines all the time. I had headaches and just health issues,
Yes.
like at that time too. And that should have also been a trigger for me that I was doing too much, or just absolutely burn out.
Yes, it can definitely wear on your physical health. And there's something else I want to add about this too. There are a lot of correlations, I think, between burnout and depression or anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you are feeling depressed, or like you might be suffering anxiety, I would listen to the podcast episode that Misty did with Sarah May. I just listened to it this week, and it is excellent. And they talk about that a lot more on there. So I don't want to talk about that much on here. But I do want to say, if that's what you're facing, it does not make you a bad person. It does not make you a bad Christian. And yes, we need to look to Jesus and lean on him. But at the same time, sometimes that's not quite enough, because there might be something going on in your brain with the serotonin that is just a little bit off, and going and getting help can be a really, really, really good thing for you and for your kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know in that particular, not necessarily that season, but I have had seasons of depression, and talking to other people, going away to a women's conference one time, while we were going through a diagnosis with my daughter. I was in a major season of depression. I was actually told my husband, this is right about the same time, I said, I'm going to talk to my doctor about getting on meds. I had talked to him. I was like, I want to talk to my doctor about getting on meds. And I went away to this convention. And while I was there, I happened across this woman, and I swear it's God ordained. She and I got to talking, and our daughters were going through the same exact diagnosis at the same exact time. And finding somebody to talk to that I felt understood what I was going through really, really helped me pull out of that funk, because I didn't feel so alone. And I think there's a stigma with depression and anxiety, which Sarah May talked on some too, that you should just be able to pull yourself out of it and not need help. But it's okay sometimes to ask for help, or to talk to people, or find somebody else who has been through the same thing, and just get support as you're going through it. There's another episode, I'll leave a link to the one with Sarah May in the show notes, but there's another episode that I did on postpartum depression with June, I always say her name wrong, Duran. It's probably wrong. But I'll leave a link to that one in the show notes too, because she talks a lot on that as well.
So I actually have an article on my blog that's like 30 ways to naturally relieve depression.
Ooh, yeah.
So if somebody is feeling depressed, I think that is a really good start. And then if it's not enough, keep going from there to get more help.
Yeah, we'll leave a link to that in the show notes as well. Because I agree. I think that they are connected. And I think that burnout can lead to those seasons, but I also think the reverse can happen. Having depression or anxiety can lead to burnout as well.
And then it can become a cycle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to overcome homeschool burnout. So how do you pull yourself out of the funk?
Okay. I think first and most importantly is to give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
Being burnout does not mean you are a horrible parent, that you're a horrible homeschool mom. It just means You need to cut yourself some slack. You need a break. So maybe something in your schedule needs tweaking, and it's okay. Anybody who's been homeschooling any length of time has been there. So definitely seek out relationships with people who are further along in the path than you. I know one time, whenever I was feeling especially overwhelmed, I called someone in my homeschool group. I had like a directory or a phone number or something. I'd never even met this person. And I called her and talked because I didn't know who else to talk to. And she was so happy to talk to me and kind of got me down off the ledge. But even if you don't know somebody well, I think you can still reach out in some way to someone because every homeschool mom I know is happy to help people with that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most homeschool moms have been through a season of burnout.
Yes.
I mean, if you haven't, then you're extremely lucky or you're in denial.
Or you haven't been homeschooling long enough.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've not been homeschooling long enough too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think some other ways are cross anything unnecessary off your list. Then look at your list and cross something else off.
Yes. Agreed.
Do something that fills you up. I do have an article on my blog that's like a list of things you can do in 15 minutes or less that might bring you joy. So it's stuff that doesn't take very long, but things that will just kind of help brighten your day. Definitely read Teaching from Rest, 100% by Sarah McKenzie. It is worth your time, worth your money, and it's a short book, so you can definitely do that. The other thing I would say is do less for your family. I think sometimes we get burnout because we're trying to do everything for everyone and be everything for everyone. And I know for me personally, helping or teaching my children how to do chores without me, and also taking the time to train them, and also giving them curriculum that they can do independently without me, were two major things that helped me to overcome those seasons of burnout.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I actually talked about you in an episode I recorded yesterday about working and homeschooling, and about how much of a difference that you made to me with making your kids do junk around the house. Like, I remember going to your house. I forget when it was. I don't know. I've been to your house lots of times, but I remember you making a comment at that time that the kids were in charge of, one of them had one floor of the house and one of them had the other. And they were younger than mine, because Lily's the same age as Allison, but Grace is younger than Kristen. So they were definitely, younger than my kids. And I'm like, dude, and I went home and I said, you girls are not allowed to complain anymore about the little chores that you do around my house. Like, Davonne's kids have to clean her whole house. But I started adding stuff, I started adding stuff to the kids' list. And as we're recording this right now, I'm going to be working for 6 hours straight, and my girls are going to cook dinner. They're watching their brother. I don't do dishes anymore. I think it's a season of having older kids, but I also think it's a season of teaching them from a young age to help out, and talking to them about it. Like, I've talked to my kids. I've been like, look, I get grumpy when I have too much on my plate. And we all know this about me. It's one of my triggers. And so help me. Like, if you see that something needs done and you see that I'm working, or that I've been running your brother to therapy, help me do that extra thing. Come in here and spend time with me doing dishes. And then I'm going to get that done a lot quicker so we can go do something else. But I think it's training them at a young age to help out around the house, and realize that by them doing that, they're taking something off of your plate, and that's going to free you up to do something later with them, or just not make you so grumpy, honestly.
Yes. And I have several thoughts about this. First off, if your kids are young, is great. Start them young. But if they're older, don't just like, oh, well, they're older, it's too late for us. It's not too late for you.
Yeah.
They will have to learn to take care of their own house one day. You are doing them a service by training them now, whenever it's not all their own house, all their, their own kids' stuff, and they're totally overwhelmed because they've got all these things going on like we do. They can learn how to do it slowly, so that way they're able to ease into adulthood a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't hurt them at all to help.
No. And I know for me, whenever I first started, that was something I felt guilty about, or sometimes people would even make comments who didn't agree with my kids having chores. And so that would kind of make me feel like, oh no, I'm making them do too much. But I mean, we homeschool. They're not in public school for 7 hours a day and then have homework and all this other stuff. School takes one kid 2 hours, and my high school are like 4 or 5 hours a day. And then if they have 30 to 60 minutes of chores every day, they still have a tremendous amount of free time.
Oh, yeah.
And if they choose to use that free time procrastinating, that's on them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I felt guilty when I started adding things, but then when I'm like, my kids have always done chores. They always did chores. They always helped. But when I started giving them other things that I'm like, well, now what am I going to do? Like, if they're doing this, like, I felt a little bit guilty, but then I'm like, they didn't crumble, and if anything, they felt more, I felt like they had more ownership in our home. Like, they felt more like it was their home. They had more pride in what they were doing. And they treated our overall home a lot better than whenever I was picking up after them all the time.
Oh yeah, when they have to feel the consequence of that. Well, if I trash the living room, I'm the one who's got to pick it up. They're not going to trash the living room.
Yeah, and they do their own laundry. So your kids do too.
Years old. Yeah.
Yep. How old did you say?
8 years old.
Yep. I just started Daniel. And I remember us talking about that. Daniel does his laundry, but I do put the soap in. But like, he puts it in there and helps put it away, and I help him hang stuff up. So yeah, we could do a whole episode on that. Okay. So other ways to overcome homeschool burnout. Recognize the problem is not new homeschool programs, which we talked about some before. But also recognizing, I feel like if a tool that you're using is not working, like giving yourself freedom to stop using it and not keep pushing through.
Yeah. And I think taking some time off to enjoy your kids is also really helpful in overcoming it, to do something you enjoy, even if you don't feel like it, especially in the wintertime. This is airing in February. On a nice day, get outside. If it's an unseasonably warm day, go outside for an hour and just enjoy the sunshine and soak that up. I think that if people will say, oh, just ditch school today and do stuff with your kids. Well, you can't do that all the time.
Right.
So I know whenever I would hear that, that was actually discouraging to me, because I felt like, well, we don't really have time to do that. So maybe you can. And if you can, that's great. And maybe you can't. But even if you can't ditch the school that day, simplify. See what you can skip or miss to try to shorten your day a little bit, so that way you still do have a little breathing room to do something that you enjoy.
Well, I know, like, for me, I think we talked about this before in another episode, morning time has brought us a lot of joy. And so to, whenever we had like a busy season or I was feeling burnout, I'd be like, okay, well, it's just a language arts and math day. Like, it's just that day, language arts and math day, whatever. Well, now I've been more like, okay, well, let's just do morning time today. Let's do morning time and, maybe some math. But because that's what brings us the most joy. It's what brings us around the table together as a family. And it's my favorite part of the day. And so I think, like you said, you can't ditch school all the time. But what in your school schedule is bringing you joy? Maybe it's read alouds with your kids. So maybe turn on an audiobook, sit on the couch, and listen to books for the day. Maybe it's something they can do independently, like math. I know math for both of us has always been pretty independent. But yeah, what in your school does bring you joy or is easy for you to go ahead and implement and go ahead and do that. And then it's okay to not do the other stuff for the day and move on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And what you said about audiobooks too, that's something that helped me, even if we couldn't do it for the whole school day, just turning on an audiobook while we ate lunch and listening for 30 minutes kind of gave me a break from answering questions every minute. And so we were all able to relax and enjoy together, and then kind of like, okay, I'm ready for the afternoon now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. I know something else I put on my list, you had already touched on less is more, but learning to say no. And another book I highly recommend is Lisa TerKeurst's The Best Yes.
Oh, that is so good.
Yes. And it is something that really helped me figure out what my best yes was. because I was saying yes to so many other things that was wearing me down that I really didn't have the time for, and they were not bringing me joy, simply because I didn't know how to say no. And that in itself can cause you to go into burnout, running yourself ragged. And so learning to say no to things, like asking yourself, okay, is this going to bring myself joy? Which I think sounds like a Marie Kondo thing, but is this my best yes? If I'm saying yes to babysitting my friends' kids, if I'm saying yes to this field trip that my kids really don't want to go on, but I feel like I should go, saying yes to co-op in some seasons. Are those things, by saying yes to those, what are you saying no to in your home? You might be saying no to sanity. You might be saying no to something, the field trip your kids really want to go on, that you could use that money for instead. And I think recognizing the difference in that can not only help prevent burnout, but saying no to things can really help get you out of a season of burnout as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that she wrote in her book. It's been several years since I've read it, but something that just really stood out and struck me was kind of what you were talking about. She said, when you say yes to one thing, you are saying no to something else. And is your no worth your yes or something? I can't remember exactly the wording, but is that worth it? Is it worth what you're missing to do this thing that you might feel obligated to do?
Yes, exactly. So how do you learn to say no to things? Like, how do you say no?
For me, it depends on the situation. I know I had a big problem with not just necessarily people asking me and me saying no, but if I saw a need, I would jump to meet that need. And I would just volunteer myself.
Yeah.
So simply not volunteering myself cut out a lot of that. And it doesn't mean you say no every time. There are some times when people really need something and it's really good to help them, even if maybe it doesn't bring you joy, but it's just needed. And I think we can teach our kids too to serve in that way. We can bring our kids with us when we serve. So it's definitely good to still do those things when we can. But if you're in a season of burnout, it's okay to say no, especially more than you normally would. I think a way to say no is to avoid, if you have a tendency to always say yes to people, don't answer them right away. Say, let me check my schedule and I will get back to you. Or something along those lines, or I will let you know on Tuesday if I can do this thing. And then do give them a direct answer, because you don't want to leave them hanging if you don't want to do it, but you don't want to say no. They're kind of waiting for you. So remember that it's very kind to just say no so they can know and find someone else.
Yeah. And I think that I told what we did one year is I made a list of, okay, this is what we're going to say yes to this year. Like, we're going to say yes to serving at our church for senior luncheons. We're going to say yes to, if there's a funeral at our church of a church member, serving those families dinner. We're going to say yes to new babies in the church and taking those moms dinner. But we're going to say no to volunteering at the nursing home on these dates because the kids really didn't enjoy that or had a hard time with it. Or we're going to say no to randomly babysitting friends' kids whenever there's snow days. And kind of making a list of, okay, how were we going to serve and how were we not going to serve? Limiting the activities that the kids did too helped a lot. Like, okay, well, we're only going to do one activity a week per kid. And that easily was able to help us say no to things as well, because it's like, okay, the kids had to think in advance what they really wanted to do. And that helped a lot too. But I think getting the kids involved and showing them, like, we need some white space. We need some time to just enjoy each other as a family and not be running ourselves ragged all of the time. And we're teaching them at a young age too, how to manage their priorities, how to manage their time, and how to give a no, well, gently, without hurting other people, but respecting our boundaries.
Yes. And I think a lot of times I'll just say, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I can't do that this time. And because I want to be kind to them, and it is nice of them to think of me, but so it's not, so we can say yes, or we can say no kindly to people. I think your tips were really, really great, and involving the kids is really helpful. I know for me, whenever I bring my kids into it and say, okay, here are the things that we can do, what's important to you girls, I have been surprised at what's important to them and what they don't really care about. Definitely asking your kids what's important to them can really be eye-opening.
Yeah, and it helps them see too. Like I said, it helps them see that it's bringing you out of this season of burnout, and it's helping the whole family too. Like I said, I think it's important to teach, especially our girls from a young age, how to avoid these seasons, how to overcome these seasons, and how to better effectively manage their time, because society just puts so much on women and moms that teaching these, modeling this for them at a young age, I think is really going to help them overall.
I 100% agree with that we need to be modeling this for our daughters, that they don't have to do everything and be stressed out. Like, we don't want them to dread becoming moms because they see how stressful it is. We want them to be able to look forward to that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Davonne, I think that's all that I had. Was there anything else you wanted to share?
I just have a Bible verse that I really want to share today. It's Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So you're feeling burnt out, remember to keep your eyes focused on Christ.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so Davonne, can you share with everybody where they can find you and connect with you?
Sure. I am at davonneparks.com, DAVONNEPARKS.com. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, all by the same name. Instagram.com/Davonne Parks, Facebook.com/Davonne Parks. Super easy.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, friend. This has been so much fun. Hopefully it encouraged you mamas out there to take a break if you're feeling in a season of burnout. Hopefully it encouraged you. And if you have any questions or want to chat about any of these topics as far as burnout goes, or just need some encouragement, you can always email me, misty@jointhejourney.net. Connect with me on Instagram too. I would love to chat with you. And you are doing a wonderful job. Just keep it up. Don't throw in the towel just yet. Spring is right around the corner. Have a good day, friends.
This has been an episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to leave a rating or review on iTunes or whatever platform it is that you use to listen to this podcast. That tells the powers to be I'm not talking to myself. Also, hit subscribe. Then you will catch every episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast each week right there in your podcast feed. You can find show notes and more at joyfullyhomeschooling.com and clicking on the episode number of the episode you are looking for. Thanks, guys. I hope this podcast encouraged you to head out there and have a more joyful homeschool.